Hello and welcome back to the Happy Horse Nutrition Podcast. I'm Dr. Nerida, PhD equine nutritionist, and today's episode is a little different because it's taken directly from a presentation I was invited to give at the American Association of Equine Practitioners Convention in 2025, which at the time of recording this was last week in Denver, Colorado. The talk is called Is This Horse Fed Right? The Practical Guide to a Rapid Field Assessment of Nutrition, and it's designed to help veterinarians do what nutritionists do instinctively, take in a horse's feeding program in minutes and spot the big red flags that might be contributing to the problems in front of them. Think of it like a nutritionist's version of a vet's early clinical assessment, not the full workup, but the high-value checkpoints that quickly tell you where to dig deeper. In this episode, I walk through a rapid diet assessment in 3 simple steps. First, the big building blocks of the diet. Things like, is there enough forage? Is it fed in a horse-friendly way? Is there forage variety? And is grain fed safely? Next, we explore body condition and weight trend and look at, are they stable? Are they moving in the right direction? Or are they quietly heading towards trouble? And third, we look at supplements, balances and fortified feeds and consider whether they are being fed at a rate that meaningfully fulfills the nutrient gaps that forage almost always leaves behind. Although this presentation was built for busy vets, it is also incredibly useful for horse owners who want a quick, reliable way to sanity check their own horse's diets before problems snowball. So whether you're a vet or a horse owner or trainer, grab your mental notepad and let's run through the rapid diet check together. Thank you very much, Dr. Claire, and welcome everyone. Thank you for coming this afternoon to the nutrition talks. I am really very honoured to be here and want to thank the AAP for the invitation and also to Cargill for sponsoring this session. So when Claire asked me to speak and we had a little bit of an open canvas on what we could speak about, I was thinking what would help you as veterinarians the most from a nutrition perspective. And I started trying to think through what is it that I do as a nutritionist when I first are asked to help with a particular horse. And I thought, maybe I'll walk you through the calculations that all of the nutritionists in the room here would do quite quickly when we first come across a new horse to work with. And when I started writing it down on paper, I realised how much we all think through in very, very rapid succession. So that's what I'm going to present to you this afternoon is just a really, really high level look at, is this horse fed right? And hopefully, my hope is that it will be useful to you in practice. So disclosure, which we're asked to do, I own the My Happy Horse nutrition app. I also was one of the original developers and part owner still of the VetXL nutrition software. You'll see a little bit of those in the talk because I can't do nutrition without actually having a calculator. So very quick overview, why do we do this? And then we'll go through the 3 steps of the rapid diet assessment. And I'll have a look at the rapid diet assessment in 30 seconds, literally the 3 most important questions you can ask yourselves as you're assessing equine clients. And there's a couple of resources at the end. So why do a rapid diet assessment and why do all of the nutritionists in the room do this very high level rapid diet assessment? And to me, it's a way of going, is this horse fed in a way that could be contributing to the problem in front of me? So you were presented with a plethora of equine health issues. Some of them will be totally unrelated to nutrition. A number of them will be related to nutrition. And if you can have some sort of a sense for what part of the horse's feeding program might be contributing to the problem and how might you direct that horse's owner to correct that feeding program, you'll be at least partly along the way of helping the owner to improve the horse's nutrition, which will then improve horse's immune response and ability to heal from various things and also take away aggravating factors that could actually be contributing or causing the disease. So it is impossible to fix a problem that has its foundations in nutrition without fixing the horse's feeding program. You can't fix the problem unless you fix what the horse has fed. I was trying to think about this from a veterinary perspective, and I love watching my veterinarian, Dr. Doug. He's a brilliant equine vet. And I love watching him when he first comes out to one of my horses if one of my horses is sick. And the amount of information you all take in a very, very short space of time, your temperature, pulse, respiration, but then you all of you, if you sat and thought about it, would be making multiple observations in very rapid succession to help you try and figure out what might be going on with that horse. So this rapid diet check is kind of like that. It's like your really early observations on a horse's feeding program, and it guides where to from here. It'll tell you if there's any big red flags or if there's smaller things that might need adjusting over time. The first thing I always pay attention to is the macro ingredients of the diet. So the forages and cereal grains, if any cereal grain is being fed. They may or may not be fed cereal grain, but if they are, you need to pay attention to them in the diet. So the first big question is there enough forage? Horses have been evolving for 55 million years, and I apologise if anyone's already heard me say this. I say this a lot, but they've been evolving 55 million years. We've been involved in their lives as humans for around 4,500 to 5,000 years. Now, you put that out on a time scale, I'm Australian, so I speak in kilometres. You put that out if you make that time scale 10 kilometres, the amount of time, it's 10,000 metres, the amount of time we've been in horses' lives is less than a step of that 10,000 metres, 10,000 steps roughly. So it's such a tiny fraction of time. And they evolved to exist on really, really high forage diets. So the moment we move any horse away from a high forage diet, we have the potential to start causing issues because we're going against evolution and what their gut evolved to handle. The first question I always ask myself, and the first thing I observe with a horse is there enough forage in the diet? Too little causes a whole bunch of issues, things like squamous gastric disease and colic, and it'll predispose them to weight loss. You'll definitely get poor performance. You'll lose stamina when they don't have enough forage in their diet, and you'll get compromised hindgut microbial health. And we could be here for a week talking about the negative implications of compromising their hindgut microbial health. The other thing with forage too is they might be feeding enough forage, but if they're feeding it in a way that then allows that horse to stand around for periods of longer than 4 hours without something to chew on, it again predisposes them to squamous gastric ulceration, and you'll start to see behavioural problems. You will create, we know in other animal species, we create psychological stress when animals don't have access to feed, and that leads to leaky gut. So and this is only a fraction of the problems that we cause when we don't give horses enough forage. So if there is not enough forage in a horse's diet, it is a giant red flag that nutrition is likely contributing to at least some health issue or will contribute to a health issue in the future. And it's something that you owners have to be on top of, and as veterinarians, if you can help them be on top of it, it means that that horse's nutrition is going to be so much better for supporting them in the way that their gastrointestinal tract has evolved to support them. So for me, and I know there's lots of different opinions in this room, but this for me is where I sit on forage. So anything less than 1.5% body weight of hay, or if the horse is out on overgrass pasture, these are all in the paper, these images, and you're very welcome to, oh, actually we said no recording, didn't we? Maybe you can't. Maybe I'm not allowed to. I don't care if you take photos of them, but they are in the paper. And less than 12 hours on pasture with no hay. All of those situations is not enough forage. Ideal for me is between 2 and 3% of body weight. That's where I like to get horses. Racehorses, I do a lot of work with racehorses in Australia and also in Japan. Some racehorses will eat that 2%. If I can get race trainers to feed at least 1.5% body weight, or ideally have hay out for them all the time, which is more the case here in the US, then I'm mostly happy as long as they're not feeding so much grain that the horse then doesn't eat the hay because they're full. Moving on, forage diversity for me, and if you listen to anything I talk about, I have started in recent years, probably the last 5 years, I've started talking about forage diversity a lot. And it's because we're starting to understand that forage diversity, so multiple different species of grasses, bringing alfalfa into a diet, or clovers, or anything that you can bring in that brings fibre diversity, so your alternate fibres like beet pulps and soybean hulls, and we use a lot of lupin hulls in Australia. The forage diversity creates fibre diversity in a horse's diet, and that fibre diversity then supports microbiome diversity. So if you think about our horses as they were evolving, they were roaming free. They weren't in stables. They weren't wandering around in small pastures. They were wandering wherever they wanted, and they could move according to where the feed took them as seasons changed. And their diet was highly diverse, and that highly diverse diet supported a highly diverse population of bacteria and fungi in their hindgut. And you think about our modern horses now, and particularly I notice in the States, they're restricted down to 1 or 2 different types of forage. And I think, this is not just me saying this, we also have microbiome data to support it. It restricts their microbiome diversity down, and then we start to create those issues that restricted microbiome diversity causes. One of them is that you will knock a horse into dysbiosis and also into a colic state when they have less diverse bacteria and fungi in their hindgut. So it's really important to try and maintain forage diversity so that you maintain fiber diversity and microbiome diversity, and then you get this resilience. Like I said, we could talk for weeks on this particular subject, but I've got 20 minutes, so I have to keep moving. So with cereal grains, it's the next thing that I pay attention to when I first come across a horse. And the question I'm asking myself is grain fed in an appropriate quantity, and is it digestible? Because if you feed too much cereal grain, or if you feed cereal grain that has not been heat processed in some way, with the exception of oats, you are going to dump a lot of starch into a horse's hindgut. And if you dump grain starch into a horse's hindgut, you start to feed the amylolytic bacteria. And those bacteria can double their population in as little as 2 hours. And you start to do, if anyone's got a calculator there, start to do the maths on that how many amylolytic bacteria you have after 10, 15 hours. And it's staggering if the food source is there. So you can really, really quickly knock a horse's hindgut into dysbiosis and have it populated by bacteria that we don't necessarily want to be in there by feeding too much cereal grain or an inappropriate source of cereal grain. So it's really important to read feed bags, talk to the owner about what products they are using, and pay attention to how much of any grain-based, so this is cereal grain-based feeds that they are feeding. You also get an increased risk of squamous gastric ulcers. You'll get an increased risk of hindgut acidosis, which we chatted about a fair bit this morning in a table topic. Certainly leaky gut. If you create hindgut acidosis from feeding, or if a horse owner creates hindgut acidosis from feeding too much grain and dumping too much starch into the hindgut, the acid that is created during starch fermentation will start to erode the hindgut wall. If anyone has worked with feedlot cattle and have seen severe rumen acidosis, you'll see the rumen wall just falls off after a while during severe ruminal acidosis. So it does do a lot of damage in there. So too much grain or indigestible grain is a giant red flag number 2 to me. So and often these two go in hand. Often you'll see not enough forage and too much grain in the same horse. So if you can change that around and give them more forage and less grain, or grain in a more digestible form, you'll see really quickly that the horse's condition will improve. And it's multiple conditions. So lots and lots of health conditions are caused by feeding not enough forage, too much grain. So for me, no grain is great if the horse can do its job that you're asking of it. I cannot race thoroughbred race horses on no grain, so I have to put some grain in their diets. I've tried to do it many times over the years for various reasons, and I can get them to win one race, but then they just can't back up. Up to 0.5 pound per 100 pounds body weight of digestible grain seems to be pretty safe. Anything more than a pound is just too much. The gut can't handle it. And also be aware too that some horses have got less amylase enzyme than a carnivorous cat. So some horses can't handle much starch at all because they just don't have the enzymes there to break the starch down. As far as digestibility goes, this is my PhD in less than 30 seconds. Anything with that is not heat processed in some way, also in the presence of water, is going to be very poorly digestible, with the exception of oats. So horses and oats have got a really nice relationship. The horse's enzymes in the small intestine digest oats more efficiently than bacterial and fungal amylases, we've found that really surprising when we discovered that. Raw corn I find is particularly damaging. So if there's raw corn in a horse's diet, you can almost guarantee that there'll be some hindgut dysbiosis and damage going on in the hindgut. Average digestibility, I put oats in here, I put steam flaked grains and micronized grains in here, only because some steam flaked grains and micronized grains can be extremely digestible and others not so much, because it depends how much moisture, how much heat, and the time they spend cooking those grains as to how digestible they're going to be. So they tend to be a little bit more variable. And then on the good digestibility end, we've got extruded grains, popped grains, which you won't see here, I don't think, but certainly in Europe, or boiling grains is a great way to increase digestibility if you have anyone who has the time to boil grains. So that's our first step. Our second step I move on to, and this is all happening like quick, you're paying attention to what the horse's diet looks like. Second one is, what's the horse's body condition score, and what is their weight change doing? So the body condition score and the direction of weight change, are they gaining weight, are they losing weight, are they holding weight, is going to tell you whether is the diet the owner feeding roughly right for this horse? Is it roughly keeping it in the right direction, and is it roughly keeping the weight gain or loss heading in the right direction? I always use the Hindgut 1 to 9 scale, and I still put 0.5, and I'm pretty sure sometimes with racehorses I put quarter marks in here too, because I can't work with we've got an Australian 1 to 5 scale. It's just got not enough points on it, but anything above 4 and below 7 generally is healthy for most horses. There will be exceptions depending on the horse, and some horses have got, there'll be one condition score in the neck and another condition score over the ribs. You kind of have to use your sense of judgment and average them out. But if you can see the ribs, they're 4 or less. If you can't feel the ribs, they're going to be 7.5 to 8 or more. That's roughly how it works. At a condition score of 5, you shouldn't be able to see the ribs, but you can feel them. I describe to people, you can feel them like the bones in the back of your hand. So it's like a really quick run over. I know you guys have all done condition scoring, but that's how I read body condition scoring. So the diet is about right when the body condition score is in the target range that you want them, and the weight is stable, or you have a thin horse who is gaining weight or an overweight horse who is losing weight. So you can go tick the diet, the amount that this horse is being fed is about right. The diet will probably need adjusting if you've got an ideal body condition score, but there's weight change in either direction that the owner doesn't want, or you've got a thin horse who's only just holding weight or may in fact still be losing weight, or you've got an overweight horse who is still gaining condition. And I can put some of my horses into that category, particularly in spring when they seem to be able to gain weight on no feed at all. So a body condition score that's too low or too high, or undesired weight change in any direction, to me that's an orange flag. It's something that it's probably not going to be causing acute health problems, but it's telling you that the diet needs some attention, so it's worth paying attention to. And the third step is, are the products fed appropriate? And there are, just walking around in the trade store here, there are so many products. I can't remember how many products we had in our FedExL database, but it was thousands of products that you have available here. But all you're wanting to look at here is whether the products the horse is being fed are roughly appropriate for that horse. And why do we feed products? Is because 99% of forages that I've come across, and I can't tell you how many thousands of forage analyses I've looked at over the years, but 99% of forages do not contain all of the nutrients a horse needs at the level a horse needs them. And things like copper and zinc, I can think of a tiny handful of pastures or hays that I've looked at that might have enough copper and zinc, and typically they come off fields that have been heavily fertilised with chicken litter. It's unusual to see pastures that have got enough of those nutrients, and then in the States you've got some high selenium, some low selenium. For us in Australia, everywhere is selenium deficient, everywhere is iodine deficient. So you need to be conscious that high forage diets are beautiful from a gut health perspective, but they won't provide all of the nutrients that a horse needs. So we need to put some kind of product that is fortified with vitamins and minerals into a diet to make sure that we're meeting all of the requirements. Another thing to be conscious of with horses on hay-based diets is once you bale hay, vitamin A and E levels start to drop. And by 12 months, it'll be virtually undetectable in any hay. So if anyone's feeding, if you have clients that are feeding shedded hay, be conscious that hay has no vitamin A or E, or no measurable vitamin A or E content. So we need to supplement these things for these horses to stay healthy long term. So that the products will be formulated to fill those gaps in forages, and we also take account when we're formulating nutritionists, we take into account any grains or other fibre ingredients that we might be putting into the horse's diet. But to do their job properly, they must be fed at their correct feeding rate. So if you look on any bag or supplement, vitamin mineral supplement or balancer pellet, you will see things like for an 1,100 pound horse in moderate intensity work, let's say for a balancer pellet, it needs 1 pound a day. Unless the owner is feeding that product at 1 pound a day, they're not going to be providing all of the nutrients that should be provided by that balancer pellet. So we, as formulating nutritionists, put a lot of effort into figuring out feeding rates for all of these products. And we need to work out, are these products being fed correctly to this particular horse? And incorrect supplementation for me is a red flag, because you're going to have all of these nutrient deficiencies. And again, we could be in here for a week talking about all of the problems that they will cause. But I think it was you, Claire, this morning was saying the problem with a lot of these deficiencies is that they take ages to show up as problems. And I refer to them as like the white ants of horse nutrition, because they'll be in there eating away at the health of a horse, and you won't necessarily get any problems until you get a disaster. And so it's really important to have some level of correct supplementation in a horse's diet. These little screenshots up here show, this is one of my horses when I took the balancer pellet out of her diet. So you can see that there's a lot of nutrient requirements that are met, but there's a lot of nutrient requirements that are no longer met. And then if we, this is a video, we'll see if it works. If we put the balancer pellet back in her diet, so the balancer pellet is at 420 grams, which is about a pound, you can see now the nutrient requirements all fill up, because that's what that balancer pellet is designed to do. It's designed to fill those gaps. So your job in this rapid diet analysis is to figure out whether the horse is being fed a feed, a balancer pellet, or a supplement that is meeting their requirements. So they can be using one product at 100% of the feeding rate, or they could be using multiple products that combine. So they might have a feed that's designed to be fed at 4 pounds a day, but they're feeding it at 2 pounds a day. And then they might have a supplement that's designed to be fed at 4 ounces a day, but they're feeding it at 2 ounces a day. And you add those together and you're getting 100% of that requirement. It's rough calculations, but it's telling you roughly whether the horse is getting everything it needs. So this field assessment in 30 seconds, if you're in a rush, the biggest questions to ask are, is the horse receiving more than 1.5% body weight in forage? Does the diet contain less than a pound per 100 pounds of body weight in grain? And when I say grain, our terminology is a little bit different. I mean cereal grain. So any bagged product that contains any level of cereal grain, is it less than a pound per 100 pounds? And then does the diet contain either a vitamin or mineral supplement, a balancer pellet, a fortified feed, fed at the correct feeding level, or a combination of the correct feeding levels? And if the answer to any of these is no, it is likely that nutrition is contributing to disease and a full diet assessment is needed. And it may not be contributing to the disease that you're seeing right in front of you, or there may not be an obvious link, but as nutritionists, we don't have medicine to use to fix horses. Our only tool is to fix diets. And the number of times I've had horses be presented to me with multiple health conditions, and I say, you know what, this horse's diet is not balanced. Let's get the diet right. We'll see what problems go away, and then we'll use targeted approaches. And so often, so many of the problems go away when we get the diet right. So remember, it's like your temperature, pulse, respiration. It's really high level. So it's not going to tell you if, say, for a laminitic pony, this is not going to tell you if any of these ingredients are triggering that laminitis. This is the questions that you're asking yourself in your head really quickly, or talking to the horse's owner about. And a full diet analysis obviously is going to reveal a lot more. I built out, because there's a little bit to take in, and that's also in the paper, we built out a web page that summarizes all of this. And very soon, early next year, in our nutrition app, there's also this rapid diet assessment that you can fill in all of the numbers, and it'll do all the calculations for you and give you a tiny little report at the end to tell you whether there's something wrong that needs addressing, or whether the horse's diet is largely okay. So I hope that you find that a useful tool. And if you want to delve into any more of these topics in detail, there's a Happy Horse Nutrition podcast there too that I'd love you to go and listen to. But I hope that's helpful, and I also hope that I finished on time.
Amazingly did.
All right, that's it for today. Thank you so much for listening, and I really hope you find the rapid diet check useful. Now, if you want a quick way to run this same rapid diet check without doing all the maths, it's built into the My Happy Horse app as a free tool. So you can work through it in a couple of minutes and get a clear steer on what needs attention. The link to download the app is in the show notes. And if you know a vet colleague or a horse owner who'd find this useful, we'd love you to share this episode with them. And we'd also love you to leave a quick rating or review for the show, as this genuinely helps more people find the podcast. Thanks again, and I'll see you in the next episode.